He hit me hard enough that my head struck the train pole. The sound echoed through the commuter rail platform, drawing stares from dozens of waiting passengers. My mother's response was immediate. She leaned in close, her breath hot against my ear, and whispered, "Lower your voice. You're embarrassing us." But what they didn't know was that the conductor saw everything. He stood frozen by the ticket booth, his face a mask of controlled fury. This conductor wasn't just any conductor. He was the last person my stepfather should have hurt someone in front of, especially when that someone was his own niece. My name is Aubrey, and at 29 years old, I thought I'd left the worst parts of my family behind. I'd built a life in Boston, a decent apartment in Brooklyn, a job as a logistics coordinator at a shipping company near the harbor, and enough distance for my mother and stepfather to breathe. But 3 days after returning from a work trip to Philadelphia, that careful distance collapsed with a single phone call. "We need to talk in person tonight." My mother's voice crackled through my phone as I sorted through accumulated mail in my kitchen. There was no hello, no "how was your trip?" Just demands. "I just got back," I replied. "Mom, can it wait until North Station, 7:30, Platform 3? The line went dead. I stared at my phone, knowing I should ignore it, should pour myself a glass of wine, order takeout, and pretend I hadn't heard her voice. But 15 years of conditioning doesn't disappear just because you've moved across town and started therapy. At 7:25, I found myself walking through the grand arches of North Station, my heels clicking against the polished floor. They were already there when I reached Platform 3. My mother stood rigid in her Burberry coat, the one she couldn't afford but bought anyway to impress her book club friends, beside her. Rick lounged against a pillar, his bulk making him look like a linebacker gone to seed. His Patriots cap was pulled low, but I could see his bloodshot eyes tracking my approach. "You're late," my mother said, though my phone showed 7:28. "I'm not late. What's this about?" Rick pushed off from the pillar, and I instinctively took a step back. Even after all these years, my body remembered. "Don't play dumb, princess. You know exactly why we're here." The platform was crowded with evening commuters, business people heading home to the suburbs, college students with backpacks, families corralling children, normal people living normal lives. I focused on them, using their presence as an anchor. "Actually, I don't. So, either tell me or I'm leaving." My mother's lips pursed, the same expression she'd worn when I was 16 and refused to give her my McDonald's paycheck. "We need $15,000. The number hung in the air between us, around us. A boarding announcement echoed through the station, the 7:35 to Fitchburg. $15,000. I repeated. "For what?" "That's family business," Rick cut in. "You don't need the details. You just need to help your mother." I almost laughed. Family business, as if we'd ever been a family. As if this man, who had invaded our lives when I was 12, had any right to use that word. I don't have $15,000 lying around. Even if I wanted to. "Don't lie," my mother's voice sharpened. "You have that promotion, that fancy apartment. You can afford to help your family. I'm a logistics coordinator, not a CEO, and my apartment is a one-bedroom rental." Rick stepped closer, and I smelled the familiar cocktail of cigarettes and cheap beer. "You got savings, inheritance from your dad. Don't pretend you're poor." "My father." They wanted my father's money. The life insurance payout I'd protected for over 20 years, the only thing my mother hadn't been able to touch, because he'd put it in a trust for my education. "That money's gone," I lied. "Student loans, living expenses." Rick's face flushed red. "Your mother needs this money. You're going to get it." "For what?" I pressed. What's so important that you need $15,000 tonight? My mother touched Rick's arm, a warning, but he shook her off, his voice rising. I don't have to explain to you. You've been living high and mighty, looking down on us, forgetting where you came from. Your mother raised you, and this is how you repay her. Commuters were starting to stare. A young woman in scrubs glanced over with concern. A businessman pretended to check his phone while obviously eavesdropping. Near the ticket booth, an uniformed conductor had stopped mid-conversation with a passenger, his attention fixed on our growing confrontation. I haven't forgotten anything, I said quietly. I remember exactly how I was raised. It was the wrong thing to say. I saw Rick's hand move before my brain could process it, a blur of motion born from years of practice. His palm connected with my cheek with a crack that seemed to echo off the station's vaulted ceiling. The force spun me sideways, and my temple struck the metal platform pole. Stars exploded across my vision. I tasted copper. The platform tilted, and I grabbed the pole to keep from falling. Through the ringing in my ears, I heard gasps from the crowd. Someone saying, "Oh my God," a child asking what happened. My mother leaned in close, her fingers digging into my arm. "Lower your voice," she hissed. "You're embarrassing us." I touched my face. My hand came away with blood from where my lip had split against my teeth. Around us, some commuters had frozen in shock. Others hurried past, unwilling to get involved. The businessman had his phone out, recording or calling 911. I couldn't tell. But it was the conductor I noticed most. He'd abandoned his position entirely, striding across the platform with purpose. His face was a professional mask, but his hands were clenched into fists at his sides. Something about his gait seemed familiar, triggering a memory I couldn't quite grasp. "We are done here," Rick announced, grabbing my mother's elbow. "You've got until Friday to get the money. Don't make me come looking for you." They left me standing there, blood dripping onto my white blouse, surrounded by strangers who didn't know whether to help or pretend they'd seen nothing. The platform announcement system crackled to life. The 7:35 train to Fitchburg is now boarding on track 3. I watched my mother's Burberry coat disappear into the crowd, never once looking back. She'd gotten what she came for, not money, but a reminder that I was still that scared teenager in their house, still someone they could hurt when they wanted something. The conductor appeared at my elbow, producing a packet of tissues from his pocket. "Miss, are you all right? Should I call the police?" I accepted the tissues, pressing them to my split lip. When I looked up to thank him, our eyes met, and that nagging familiarity crystallized into recognition. But it couldn't be. He was older now, silver threading through hair that had once been dark lines carved around eyes I'd last seen 17 years ago. He wore a name tag that read Nathan. But I knew that face. "I'm fine," I lied, the same lie I'd told 100 times before. It was just a misunderstanding. He studied me for a long moment, and I saw the exact second he recognized me, too. His professional mask slipped, revealing something raw underneath. "Aubrey." I nodded, unable to speak. He glanced around the platform, then back at me. I saw everything, every bit of it. He pressed something into my hand, a business card. "When you're ready to stop calling it a misunderstanding, you call me. We have a lot to talk about." The train pulled in with a squeal of brakes and a blast of diesel fumes. Nathan, or Ben, or whoever he was now, returned to his duties, helping passengers board. I stood there holding his card in a bloody tissue, watching him work. It wasn't until I was back in my apartment, door locked and deadbolt, that I looked at the card properly. Nathan Morrison, senior conductor. But it was the handwritten note on the back that made my hands shake. "I remember who you are, and I remember what they did to you. It's time someone helped." Ben? The business card sat on my kitchen counter for 3 days before I found the courage to flip it over again. Ben? Uncle Ben. After 17 years, he'd been right there on that platform, watching Rick hit me the same way he'd watched it happen when I was young. I poured myself coffee and let the memories surface. Something my therapist said was healthy, though it never felt that way. My father died when I was 6, a heart attack at 38, leaving behind a small life insurance policy and a house my mother couldn't afford. She sold the house within 6 months, moved us to a cramped apartment in River, and started dating with the desperation of someone who'd never learned to be alone. Rick appeared when I was 12. I remember the first time I met him, how he'd filled our doorway with his bulk, bringing the smell of motor oil and menthol cigarettes into our home. My mother had giggled like a teenager, wearing a dress I'd never seen before, her lipstick too bright. "Aubrey, this is Rick. He's going to be eating dinner with us tonight." He never left. Within 3 months, he'd moved in. Within 6, he'd established the rules: no talking back, no attitude, no mentioning the empty beer cans that accumulated like monuments to his presence, and absolutely no complaining to anyone outside the family. "What happens in this house stays in this house," my mother would say, usually while covering a bruise with concealer. People wouldn't understand. The first time Rick raised his hand to me, I was 14. I'd forgotten to wash his truck, one of my assigned chores that had somehow become my responsibility. He didn't hit me that time. He just grabbed my wrist hard enough to leave marks and held it over the kitchen stove's lit burner. "You forget again, and we'll see how well you can do chores with bandages." My mother had been in the next room. She must have heard my gasp, seen the marks later. Her response: "You need to be more careful. Rick works hard. He deserves respect." Uncle Ben visited 2 weeks later for what would be the last time. My father's brother, the conductor who'd sometimes take me on short train rides when I was little, teaching me to read the schedule boards and punch tickets. He noticed the fading bruises on my wrist immediately. "What happened there, kiddo?" I'd glanced at my mother, who stood in the doorway like a prison guard. I fell, grabbed the wrong thing trying to catch myself. Ben didn't buy it. I could see it in his eyes, the way they hardened as he looked between me and my mother. He tried talking to her privately, voices rising in the backyard while Rick was at work. I pressed my ear to the window, catching fragments. "Not safe. Needs help. Obligation to protect." My mother's response was ice cold. "You have no idea what it's like being a single mother. Don't you dare judge me. Rick is good to us. Aubrey's just clumsy. Always has been." Ben left that day and never came back. My mother told people he'd shown his true colors, that he was jealous of her happiness, trying to break up our family. She cut off contact with my father's entire side of the family, claiming they were toxic influences. I was alone. The worst incident happened when I was 16. I'd saved money from my part-time job at McDonald's to buy a used laptop for school. When Rick found out I had secret money, he exploded. I made the mistake of standing my ground, telling him it was mine, that I'd earned it. The push sent me backwards down the basement stairs. 13 steps. I counted them on the way down, my body hitting each one. The concussion kept me out of school for a week. The official story. I'd tripped carrying laundry. Aubrey's always been accident-prone. She tries to do too much at once, my mother told the school counselor who called to check. The counselor must have had suspicions because she asked to speak with me directly, but with my mother hovering nearby. What could I say? I stuck to the story, hating myself for the lie, but hating my mother more for making it necessary. I learned to be invisible. Straight A's, but not so perfect that I drew attention. Part-time job, but always turning over half my paycheck to help with household expenses. College applications hidden like contraband. Essays written at the public library. When I got into Boston University, with a partial scholarship, my mother acted like I'd betrayed her. After everything I've sacrificed for you, she'd sobbed, you're just going to abandon us. Rick was more direct. You think you're better than us. Think college makes you special. You'll come crawling back when you realize what the real world's like. But I didn't crawl back. I worked 3 jobs, lived on ramen and determination, and graduated with a degree in supply chain management. Every holiday, every birthday, every guilt trip phone call, I held my ground. I'd escaped. Or so I thought. Now, sitting in my kitchen with Uncle Ben's card in my hand, I realized I'd never really escaped at all. I'd just learned to manage the distance, like keeping a wild animal at arm's length. But they still had their claws in me, still knew exactly which buttons to push to make me show up on that platform. The trust fund my father left, the one thing my mother couldn't touch, sat in my investment account, grown from $50,000 to nearly $200,000. Through careful management and compound interest, it was my safety net, my money, my promise to myself that I'd never be trapped again. And now they wanted it. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother, Friday, Aubrey. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I deleted it without responding and picked up Ben's card again. 17 years ago, he'd tried to help and been shut out. But I wasn't 14 anymore. I wasn't trapped in their house, dependent on their approval, or afraid of their retaliation. Well, not as afraid. My reflection in the kitchen window showed the bruise blooming across my cheek, purple and green like a sick watercolor painting. My split lip had scabbed over, but it pulled whenever I tried to smile. These marks would fade, just like all the others had. But maybe this time, I wouldn't let them fade into nothing. Maybe this time I'd stop protecting the people who'd never protected me. I picked up my phone and dialed the number on the card. It rang 3 times before a familiar voice answered. Nathan Morrison. It's Aubrey, I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. I think I'm ready to stop calling it a misunderstanding. There was a pause, then, good. I've been waiting 17 years to hear you say that. The bruise on my face had turned spectacular shades of purple and yellow. By the time I returned to work on Monday, my manager, Sandra, took one look at me and pulled me into her office. Jesus, Aubrey, what happened? I'd practiced my lie in the mirror that morning, walked into a door frame in the dark. You know how clumsy I am. Sandra's expression said she didn't bite for a second, but she didn't push. Take whatever time you need. And if you need to talk. I'm fine, I said, the words automatic as breathing. Really? But I wasn't fine. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart rate spiked. Every unexpected sound made me flinch. By Wednesday, the stress was eating me alive. My mother had called 6 times, left 3 voicemails, each more threatening than the last. You're being selfish, Aubrey, after everything I've done for you. Rick is getting impatient. You know how he gets. Friday, Aubrey, don't test us. I'd agreed to meet Ben after work on Thursday, the day before their deadline. We chose a coffee shop in Cambridge, far from anywhere my mother or Rick might appear. I arrived early, selecting a corner table with clear sight lines to both entrances, old habits ingrained too deep to break. Ben walked in exactly on time, still wearing his conductor's uniform. He'd aged well, I thought, though the years showed in the lines around his eyes and the grey in his hair. He spotted me immediately, and something shifted in his expression. Relief mixed with old regret. You look just like your father, he said as he sat down. Same stubborn chin. Is that why you changed your name to avoid any connection to us? He stirred sugar into his coffee, taking his time. I changed it because your mother threatened to file a restraining order if I tried to contact you again, said I was harassing her family, making false accusations. Nathan Morrison could work for the MBTA without triggering any alerts. Ben Walker couldn't. You've been here all along, working the trains. 15 years. Started on the freight lines, worked my way up to passenger service. I kept hoping I'd see you someday, that you'd gotten out. He paused. When I saw you on that platform, when I saw him hit you, it was like being transported back 17 years. I touched my face unconsciously. The bruise was fading, but the memory wouldn't. Tell me about Friday, Ben said. What happens if you don't give them the money? Rick happens, I said simply. He'll show up at my work, my apartment. He'll make scenes until I'm too embarrassed to refuse. Or worse. Or worse, Ben repeated. Aubrey, you know this isn't about money, right? It's never been about money. I knew. Of course, I knew. It was about control, about reminding me that I'd never really be free of them, that no matter how far I ran, or how much I accomplished, I was still that scared teenager in their house. My mother texted me this morning, I said, pulling out my phone. Want to see? The message was typical, Mom, don't make me choose between you and Rick. You know I'll choose him. I always have. Ben read it twice, his jaw tightening. She actually put that in writing. She's not subtle. Never has been. This is evidence, Aubrey. Documentation. Has she sent others like this? I scrolled through my phone, showing him the greatest hits, the guilt trips, the threats, the casual cruelty wrapped in maternal concern. I'd saved them all, though I couldn't say why. Maybe some part of me always knew this day would come. What about the incident at the station? Ben asked. You said people were recording. I don't know. Maybe there were witnesses, but... I shrugged. You know how it is. People don't want to get involved. I'm involved, Ben said firmly. I've got 17 years of regret for not pushing harder when you were a kid. I'm not making that mistake again. He reached into his bag and pulled out a folder. I've been doing some research since Monday. Did you know Rick has 2 restraining orders from previous relationships, both for domestic violence? I stared at the papers he spread on the table. Police reports, court documents, a mugshot from 2002 that my mother must have paid to make disappear. How did you? I've got a friend in the Boston PD. Another one in the courthouse. 17 years is a long time to build connections. He pointed to one document. This is from his ex-wife. Says he broke her orbital bone. Sound familiar? My hand went to my cheekbone. Remembering other impacts, other threats. There's more, Ben continued. Your mother's been using your social security number, credit cards, utility accounts. My friend ran a check. You've got accounts you don't even know about. The coffee shop suddenly felt too small, too public. She wouldn't. Asterisk, she would dot asterisk, and she did. It's all here. Identity theft, fraud, assault. This isn't just about getting rid of them. Aubrey, this is about protecting yourself from what they've already done. I felt something crack inside me, some last wall of denial crumbling. They weren't just toxic. They were criminal. And I'd been enabling them with my silence. What do I do? The question came out smaller than I'd intended. First, you don't give them any money on Friday. Not a cent. Second, we file a police report about the assault. I'm a witness, and there's video from the station cameras I already checked. Third, we get you a lawyer and start unwinding the financial mess. They'll come after me. Let them try, Ben said. You've got resources now. You've got me. You've got evidence. You're not 14 anymore, kiddo. Kiddo. The nickname unlocked something in my chest, a grief I'd been carrying for 17 years. This was what family was supposed to be, someone who showed up, who fought for you, who didn't make excuses for the people hurting you. Why? I asked. Why do all this for me now? Ben's eyes went distant. Your father was my best friend, not just my brother. When he died, I promised I'd look out for you. I failed. Your mother shut me out. And I let her, because it was easier than fighting. I told myself you'd be okay, that I was overreacting. He met my gaze again. I've regretted that every day since. This is my chance to keep my promise, even if it's 17 years late. My phone buzzed. Another text from my mother. Rick's asking about his money. Don't disappoint us. His money, I said, showing Ben. It's already his in her mind. Good. Let her keep thinking that. The more confident they are, the sloppier they'll be. He gathered the papers back into the folder and slid it across to me. Take these home. Read everything. Call me with any questions. And Aubrey, whatever happens Friday, you don't face it alone. I left the coffee shop feeling something I hadn't experienced in years, hope. Not the fragile kind I'd nursed through college, always waiting for the other shoe to drop. This was different, solid, backed by evidence and allies, and the strange, powerful feeling of finally saying enough. That night, I went through the folder page by page. Each document was another nail in the coffin of my mother's fiction, the loving parent, the sacrificing mother, the victim of an ungrateful daughter. The truth was uglier, but somehow cleaner. She was a criminal who'd chosen her abusive husband over her daughter's safety, who'd stolen from me even as she demanded more. Friday morning arrived grey and drizzling, fitting weather for what felt like a funeral. I dressed carefully, professional blazer, minimal makeup that didn't hide the fading bruise. If they wanted to see what they'd done, let them see it. My phone rang at 9 a.m. sharp. My mother's voice was honey-sweet, the tone she used when she wanted something. Good morning, sweetheart. I hope you've had time to think about family loyalty. I have, I said, surprising myself with how steady I sounded. I've thought about it a lot. Good. Then you'll meet us at. I'm not giving you any money, Mom. Not today, not ever. The silence stretched so long I wondered if she'd hung up. Then, in a voice like breaking glass, you ungrateful little. After everything, I ended the call and blocked her number. Then I blocked Rick's. My hands shook, but my resolve didn't waver. 17 years of conditioning screamed that I was making a mistake. That family was everything. That I owed them my silence, if not my compliance. But Ben was right. I wasn't 14 anymore. And this time, I wouldn't be silent. The call came at 10:47 p.m., just as I was getting ready for bed. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Aubrey, it's Ben. I'm at Mass General. Your mother's here. My stomach dropped. What happened? Car accident. She's okay. Minor injuries, but she's been asking for you. The thing is, he paused, she's alone. Rick never showed up. I sat down on my bed, processing this. Why are you there? I've been keeping tabs on them since our coffee meeting. When I heard the call come over the emergency scanner, I came to see if you needed support. Aubrey, she's telling the nurses that her daughter abandoned her, that she has no one. The old guilt tried to surface, but I pushed it down. That's her choice. Ben, she chose Rick. She said so herself. I know, but I thought you should know. Also. Another pause. The police want to talk to her. Apparently, there was alcohol involved, and she wasn't driving her own car. The pieces clicked. She was driving Rick's truck. A rental car, actually, in his name, which is interesting considering he reported it stolen 3 hours ago. I stood up, pacing my small bedroom. He's setting her up. Looks like it. The rentals, the credit fraud in your name. I'm betting it was all her doing, but under his direction. Now that you won't pay, he's cutting her loose. It was so perfectly Rick. Let my mother take all the risks while he kept his hands clean. And when things went south, throw her under the bus and walk away. Has she figured it out yet? I asked. If she has, she's not admitting it. She keeps saying there must be some mistake, that Rick would never. Ben's voice held a mixture of pity and frustration. Aubrey, I think this is our opening. What do you mean? She's vulnerable right now, confused, maybe ready to finally see Rick for what he is. If you could talk to her. No. The word came out harder than I intended. I'm done trying to save her from her own choices. But even as I said it, I was already reaching for my car keys. Some habits die harder than others. Mass General at midnight felt like entering another world. Fluorescent lights, antiseptic smell, the controlled chaos of the emergency department. I found Ben in the waiting room, looking tired but alert in his civilian clothes. She's in Bay 12, he said. The police just left. They are charging her with driving under the influence and possession of a stolen vehicle. Jesus. It gets worse. They found drugs in the car. Not hers, I'm guessing. But try proving that. We walked through the emergency department together, through the curtain of Bay 12. I could see my mother propped up in bed, a bandage on her forehead, her designer clothes replaced with a hospital gown. She looked smaller somehow, older. For the first time in years, she looked vulnerable. She saw me and her face crumpled. Aubrey. Oh, thank God. There's been a terrible mistake. Rick's not answering his phone. And these people are saying. I know what they are saying. I stayed by the curtain, not moving closer. Where's Rick? Mom, I don't know. We had a fight after you, she swallowed. After you refused to help, he said he needed time to think. He left me at a hotel and said he'd be back. Ben pulled out his phone, showing me something he'd found. Rick's Facebook status from 2 hours ago. Sometimes you gotta cut the dead weight and move on. Phoenix, here I come. I showed it to my mother, watched her face as she read it once, twice, 3 times. No, she whispered. He wouldn't. We're getting married. He said once this was over. Once we had the money. Once you stole $15,000 from your daughter for him, I clarified. Then what? He'd suddenly become the man you've been pretending he is for 17 years. Her face hardened, the familiar mask sliding back into place. You don't understand. Rick loves me. He just has problems. Stress from work. If you hadn't been so selfish. Stop. I was surprised by how calm I sounded. Rick doesn't have a job. Hasn't for 3 months. I hired a private investigator. Mom, I know everything. That was a lie. I hadn't hired anyone. But she didn't need to know that Ben's police connections were doing the work for free. You're lying. I? Where is he? Why isn't he here? Why is the rental car in his name reported stolen with you driving it? She opened her mouth, closed it, looked at her hands. The silence stretched between us. Years of lies and excuses finally running dry. Ben stepped forward. Mrs. Collins, I'm Ben Walker. You might remember me. My mother's eyes widened. Ben, but you disappeared. You abandoned us just like I was threatened with legal action if I tried to contact my niece again, Ben said evenly. You made sure of that, just like you made sure Aubrey had no one to turn to when Rick was hurting her. He never. Stop, my voice cut through her denial. Just stop. I have the medical records. Mom, the emergency room visits, the school reports, the photographs Uncle Ben took when he tried to help. We have everything. She looked between us, and I saw the moment she realized we weren't bluffing. But instead of remorse, her face twisted with rage. You set me up, both of you. You wanted this to happen. No, Mom. Rick set you up. We just refuse to be victims anymore. A nurse appeared, checking my mother's for. The police will be back in the morning, she said gently. You'll need to arrange bail. Is there someone you can call? My mother looked at me, desperate now. Aubrey, please. I'm your mother. Whatever's happened, whatever mistakes I've made, you can't let them arrest me. I thought about all the times she'd stood by while Rick hurt me. All the times she'd chosen him over my safety. All the lies she'd told to keep her fantasy intact. You're right, I said. You are my mother, and a mother's job is to protect her child. You failed. I paused, letting the words sink in. Aubrey, the trust fund Dad left me, I still have it. All of it. Plus 20 years of growth. I could pay your bail, hire you a lawyer, make this go away. I moved closer, meeting her eyes. But I won't, because you taught me something important. Family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when you need them. I turned to Ben. Uncle Ben showed up 17 years late, but he showed up. You? I looked back at my mother. You've been here my whole life and never once showed up for me. I did my best. The words exploded out of her. You have no idea what it was like being a single mother. Rick was good to me. He provided for us. With what money, Mom? The jobs he didn't have, or the credit cards he opened in my name. Her face went white. I don't know what you're talking about. Ben pulled out a folder he'd come prepared with. 7 credit cards, 3 utility accounts, 2 car loans, all in Aubrey's name, all opened in the last 5 years. Your signature on the applications. Rick said, she started. He said it would help build your credit, I finished, a humorless laugh escaping me. Did Rick say to steal from your daughter, or was that your own idea? She didn't answer, couldn't answer. The truth was written all over her face. Here's what's going to happen, I said, surprised by how steady my voice was. You're going to face the charges, DUI, stolen vehicle, identity theft, fraud. You're going to tell the truth about Rick, where he is, what he's done, everything. And then you're going to leave me alone forever. You can't do this to me. I'm your mother. You're right. You are my mother, and that's why this hurts so much. I pulled out my phone, showing her the screenshots I'd captured, 2 restraining orders against Rick, police reports from his ex-wife, hospital records from when I was 14, 16, 17. You knew. You always knew. And you chose him anyway. The fight went out of her then, like air from a punctured balloon. She sank back against the pillows, looking every one of her 53 years. He said he loved me, she whispered. He said we were a family. We were never a family. Mom, we were his victims. The only difference is I got out. I turned to leave, but her voice stopped me. What am I supposed to do now? I looked back at the woman who'd given birth to me, but had never really been my mother. The same thing I did when I was 18. Outside the hospital, the night air felt clean and sharp. Ben walked me to my car. Neither of us spoke until we reached it. You did good, kiddo, he said finally. Your dad would be proud. Would he? I leaned against my car, suddenly exhausted. I just put my mother in jail. No, Ben said. Rick put her in jail. She put herself in jail. You just stopped enabling them. He squeezed my shoulder. It's going to be hard for a while. The guilt, the second-guessing, but you did the right thing. I knew he was right, but knowing and feeling were two different things. As I drove home through the empty streets, I thought about the 18-year-old girl who'd left home with nothing but determination and a need to survive. She'd built a life, a career, an identity, all while carrying the weight of her past like invisible chains. Tonight, I'd finally set down that weight. It didn't feel like freedom yet. It felt like grief. But maybe that was the first step. The detective's name was Maria Santos, and she had the kind of eyes that had seen too much, but still held compassion. We sat in a small interview room at the police station, the fluorescent lights harsh against the beige walls. Ben sat beside me, a steady presence I was still getting used to having. Your mother is cooperating, Detective Santos said, sliding a folder across the table. She's provided quite a bit of information about Rick Morrison, whose real name, by the way, is Richard Morse. I shouldn't have been surprised that even his name was a lie, but somehow I was. He's got warrants in Arizona and Nevada, she continued. Fraud, assault, domestic violence. Your mother was his latest mark, though I suspect you already knew that. I knew he was dangerous, I said. I didn't know the extent. Santos opened the folder, revealing photographs, police reports, court documents, a trail of broken women across 3 states, each one thinking they'd found love. Each one left devastated, financially, emotionally, physically. This one, Santos pointed to a photograph of a woman with a black eye, is from 2018. Phoenix, Santos continued. She owned a small business, had good credit within a year of meeting Richard. She was bankrupt and in the hospital. Ben's hand clenched on the table. How does someone like that keep getting away with it? They are smart about it, Santos replied. Never stay too long in one place. Always make sure the women are too embarrassed or frightened to press charges. Use their names for everything so when it falls apart, they take the blame. Like my mother, I said. Like your mother, except this time, we have something we didn't have before. We have a witness willing to testify about long-term abuse. We have documentation going back years, and we have your mother's cooperation. However reluctant, I thought about my mother in her cell, finally facing the truth about the man she'd chosen over her own daughter. A part of me felt vindicated. A larger part just felt empty. What do you need from me? I asked. Everything, Santos replied. Every incident you remember, every threat, every time money went missing. We are building a RICO case, racketeering. Richard wasn't just an abusive boyfriend. He was running a con, and your mother was both victim and accomplice. For the next 3 hours, I talked. The words came easier than I'd expected, like lancing a wound that had festered for years. Ben occasionally added details from what he'd witnessed, and Santos recorded it all with professional efficiency. The credit card's in my name, I said. How bad is it? Santos pulled out another sheet. 7 cards, total debt of approximately $43,000. 2 car loans totaling $67,000. Various utility accounts in arrears. The numbers hit me like physical blows. My perfect credit. Years of careful financial planning destroyed by the woman who'd given birth to me. Can any of it be recovered? Ben asked. With documentation proving identity theft, most of it, but it'll take time. Lawyers, patience. Santos looked at me with something like sympathy. I'm sorry this happened to you. No one deserves this, especially from family. Family? The word felt foreign now, like clothes that no longer fit. That evening, I met with the lawyer Ben had recommended, Patricia Chen, a small woman with a fierce reputation for handling financial crimes. Her office was all sharp edges and clean lines, as precise as her approach to my case. The good news, she said, reviewing my documents, is that we have clear evidence of fraud. The bad news is that recovering from identity theft is a marathon, not a sprint. Are you prepared for that? Do I have a choice? You always have a choice. You could walk away, absorb the debt, let them win. She studied me over her glasses. But something tells me you're not the walking away type. She was right. The girl who'd hidden bruises and made excuses was gone. In her place sat someone I was still getting to know, someone who fought back. What's our first move? I asked. Freeze everything. Every account, every card. Then we start disputing charges, filing reports, rebuilding your financial identity from scratch. It's going to be invasive and exhausting. And my mother. Patricia's expression didn't change. She's looking at significant jail time. Identity theft, fraud, DUI, possession. With her cooperation against Richard, maybe 5 to 7 years. Without it, possibly 10. 10 years. My mother could spend the next decade in prison because she'd chosen a con artist over her own daughter. There's something else, Patricia said. Your father's trust fund. We need to secure it immediately if your mother knows about it. She knows. She's always known. It's what she was after at the train station. Then we move it today. New accounts, new passwords, everything locked down tight. Patricia slid papers across for me to sign. I've seen too many cases where desperate people do desperate things. As I signed my name over and over, each signature felt like drawing a line in the sand. This is mine. This is protected. This is no longer accessible to those who would hurt me. My phone buzzed, a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. You? Rick's voice, rough with rage, and what sounded like cheap whiskey. You destroyed everything. I hit the speaker button so Patricia could hear. She immediately started recording. Rick, or should I say Richard House Phoenix? A pause. You think you're smart. You think you've won. Your mother's in jail because of you. You did that. No, Richard. She's in jail because she committed crimes for you. She knew what she was doing. Greedy, always wanted more than I could give. Patricia scribbled something on a pad. Keep him talking. Is that why you're running? I asked. Because she wanted too much. Or because the police in 3 states want to talk to you. You don't know. I know about Phoenix, about the woman who owned the bakery, about Las Vegas and the teacher. Should I keep going? The silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. Then your mother deserved better than an ungrateful. Like you, I finished. My mother deserved better than a con artist who used her and threw her away. But you're right about one thing. She made her choice, and now she's living with it. This isn't over. Yes, it is. You're done, Richard. No more women to con, no more families to destroy. The police know who you are, what you've done. Every state you run to, they'll be waiting. He started to speak, but I cut him off. And Richard, if you come near me, if you even think about coming back to Boston, I'll be ready. I'm not 14 anymore. I'm not scared anymore. And I have resources you can't even imagine. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, but my voice had been steady. Patricia looked at me with something like approval. Well done. That recording just became evidence. Threats, admission of knowledge about the crimes, consciousness of guilt. You just helped nail your own case shut. That night, I sat in my apartment, my safe space, my sanctuary, and tried to process everything. In less than a week, my carefully constructed life had exploded. My mother was in jail. My stepfather was on the run. My credit was destroyed. My family secrets were evidence in multiple criminal cases. And yet, for the first time in 17 years, I could breathe. My phone rang. Ben? Hey, kiddo. Just checking in. How are you holding up? I paused, really thinking about it. I'm okay. Tired. Overwhelmed, but okay. That's normal. You've been in survival mode for so long. Your body doesn't know how to process safety yet. Safety. Such a simple word for something I'd never really had. Ben, why didn't you give up after 17 years? Why keep looking for me? I could hear him thinking, choosing his words. Guilt, partly. Love, mostly. You were this bright, funny kid who loved trains and terrible jokes. Then I watched that light dim every time I visited. When your mother cut me off, I told myself you'd be okay. That I was overreacting. But I never stopped wondering. Never stopped hoping I'd get a chance to make it right. You can't fix the past. No, but I can be here for the future, if you'll let me. I thought about family, about blood versus choice, about the uncle who'd become Nathan Morrison just to stay close enough to help if the chance ever came. I'd like that, I said, and meant it. After we hung up, I pulled out the folder Patricia had given me, forms to fill out, an affidavit to sign, a long list of agencies to contact. The work of rebuilding what my mother and Rick had destroyed, but also the work of building something new, something that was entirely mine, protected by more than silence and distance, protected by truth, by law, by my own willingness to fight. I picked up a pen and began. The forensic accountant's name was David Kim, and his office looked like a paper explosion had occurred. Boxes of documents lined the walls, and his desk was buried under spreadsheets that told the story of my financial destruction. The good news, he said, adjusting his glasses, is that they were sloppy. The bad news is that they were consistently sloppy for 5 years. I sat across from him with Patricia, my lawyer, and Ben, who'd insisted on coming for moral support. The numbers David presented made my stomach turn. Let's start with the credit cards, David said. David pulled up a spreadsheet on his monitor. 7 cards opened between 2019 and 2024. The signatures match your mother's handwriting, which helps our case. Total debt, $43,762. What did they buy? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Gambling websites, mostly online poker, sports betting, casino sites. Also luxury items, electronics, jewelry, designer clothes, several cash advances, probably to feed Rick's gambling offline. Each transaction was another betrayal. While I'd been eating ramen to save money, they'd been spending thousands in my name. The car loans are more complex, David continued. 2 vehicles, both purchased from the same dealership. The sales manager there has a reputation for working with people like Rick. No verification calls, rushed paperwork. Let me guess, Ben said. Both cars are gone. Sold within months of purchase, cash deals, no paper trail. The loans, however, remain. Patricia took notes rapidly. That's actually good for us. Shows pattern of fraud, not legitimate purchases. Continue. David pulled up another screen. Here's where it gets interesting. Your mother didn't just steal your identity. She created an entire false financial life for you. Utility accounts at addresses you've never lived. Medical debt from procedures you never had. Even a gym membership in Scottsdale, Arizona. Arizona. I thought of Rick fleeing to Phoenix, around the time Rick was establishing himself there, preparing for his next move. David looked at me with sympathy. Your mother wasn't just his victim, Ms. Collins. She was his partner. The words hit harder than any physical blow. I'd maintained some small illusion that my mother had been manipulated, controlled, forced into these crimes. But the evidence showed planning, intention, collaboration. There's more, David said gently. We found applications for business loans. 3 of them, all rejected, but all using your information. They were trying to get bigger money, the trust fund. I realized when the loans didn't work, they came for the trust fund. Exactly. Your refusal saved you from much worse. If they'd gotten that $15,000, it would have been gone in days, and they'd have come back for more. Patricia leaned forward. David, what's our recovery timeline? With full cooperation from authorities and clear evidence of fraud, 6 months to a year for the credit cards. The car loans will take longer. We'll need to prove you never had possession of the vehicles. The medical debt should be easiest to dispute. And my credit score. David Winston, I corrected, realizing he'd misheard. Currently 423. With work, we can get it back to respectable within 2 years. Good within 3. I'd spent a decade building perfect credit. They destroyed it in 5 years. I need some air, I said, standing abruptly. Outside David's office building, Boston's financial district hummed with lunch hour energy. Men and women in suits hurried past, living their normal lives with their intact credit scores and mothers who didn't steal from them. Ben found me on a bench, staring at nothing. It's a lot, he said simply. She was supposed to protect me. That's the basic contract, isn't it? Parents protect their children. How do you betray that so completely? I don't know, kiddo. I've asked myself that for 17 years. Your mom, something broke her when your dad died. Or maybe it was always broken, and his death just revealed it. Did he know, Dad? What she was capable of? Ben considered this. Tom loved her, but he wasn't blind. Why do you think he put your trust fund in such an ironclad structure? He knew she'd need protection from her own impulses. He protected my money, but not me. He died. Aubrey, that wasn't a choice he made. I knew he was right. But the anger needed somewhere to go. All these years of stored-up rage. And now that I could finally express it, I didn't know how. My phone buzzed. Patricia, come back up. There's been a development. Back in David's office, Detective Santos was waiting with a laptop open. Richard Morris was arrested this morning in Tucson, she announced. Routine traffic stop. He had outstanding warrants, fake ID, and something else interesting, a notebook. She turned the laptop toward us. On screen were photographs of handwritten pages, Rick's crude scrawl documenting his cons, names, dates, amounts, and there, on page after page, S. Collins with dollar amounts, account numbers, schemes. S. Collins. I asked. Susan Collins, your mother. These are his records of their partnership. What she brought in, what he paid her, what they planned next. Santos pointed to one entry. This one's dated a week before the train station incident. S to get $15K from a split 70/30ths. 70% for Rick, 30 for my mother. She was going to betray me for $4,500. This notebook is a gift, Patricia said. Her professional mask not quite hiding her satisfaction. It corroborates everything. Shows clear criminal partnership. Your mother can't claim coercion or ignorance anymore. Has she seen it? I asked. She will. Her public defender gets the evidence this afternoon. Santos stuttered me. Are you prepared for that? She'll know you know everything. Was I prepared? I thought about the 18-year-old girl who'd left home with nothing. The 25-year-old who still flinched at unexpected sounds. The 29-year-old sitting in this office, surrounded by evidence of her mother's crimes. I've been preparing for this my whole life, I said. I just didn't know it. That evening, I sat in my apartment with Ben. Chinese takeout containers spread between us on the coffee table. He'd started coming by regularly. These quiet dinners were becoming an unexpected comfort. Tell me about my dad, I said suddenly. The real stuff, not the sanitized memories. Ben smiled. Tom was brilliant, but scattered. He'd start 5 projects, finish maybe 2. Drove your mom crazy. Actually, she was always the organized one, the planner. He paused. Maybe that's why she fell for Rick's schemes. She'd always been the one making plans, just not good ones. No, not good ones, he picked at his low mine. Tom worried about you. You know, even when you were tiny, he'd say you were too sensitive for this world, that you felt things too deeply. He was right. He was wrong. That sensitivity, it's what saved you. You knew something was wrong in that house. You protected yourself the only way you could, by leaving, by building boundaries. A less sensitive kid might have been destroyed. I thought about that, about the ways trauma could forge strength or shatter it entirely, about the thin line between survival and destruction. My phone rang, an unknown number, but local. I almost didn't answer, then did. Aubrey. This is Grace Morrison from Sunrise Behavioral Health. I'm calling about your mother. My chest tightened. Is she okay? She's asking for you. She's been placed on suicide watch, and she's requesting contact. Now, you're under no obligation. Mental health check, I cut in. She received some difficult news today regarding her case. She's safe, being monitored, but she's quite distressed. She gave us your number as her emergency contact. I looked at Ben, who'd heard enough to understand. He shook his head slightly, not telling me no, just expressing his opinion. I can't, I said finally. I'm sorry, but I can't be her emergency contact. She has a public defender, who can help arrange appropriate support. I understand if you change your mind. I won't. I hung up and set the phone aside, my hands surprisingly steady. That was hard, Ben observed. Yes, but not as hard as I thought it would be. I picked up my chopsticks again. She's not my responsibility anymore. Maybe she never should have been. You were a child. Children aren't responsible for their parents' well-being. Tell that to every kid with an alcoholic parent, an abusive parent, a mentally ill parent. We all think we can save them if we are just good enough, quiet enough, perfect enough. But we can't. No, he agreed. We can't. Later that night, I pulled out my laptop and began making lists, new bank accounts to open, credit monitoring services to install, security measures to implement. The work of rebuilding felt overwhelming, but also strangely liberating. Every form filled out, every account secured, was another brick in the wall between my new life and my old one. I thought about my mother in her cell, under constant supervision, finally confronting the weight of her own actions. A part of me felt the pull of guilt, tempted to question my choice to stay away, but Patricia had cautioned me about moments like this. Abusers often escalate when they lose control, she'd said. Suicide threats, medical emergencies, sudden revelations of love, all tactics to pull you back in. Stay strong. I was trying, but strength, I was learning, wasn't the absence of doubt. It was continuing forward despite it. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost deleted it, then saw the preview, "This is Susan Collins." Against every instinct, I opened it. This is Susan Collins using the counselor's phone. They let me send one message. I'm sorry for everything. Rick's notebook showed me what I became. I chose him over you every time. And now I've lost everything. You deserved better. Don't come see me. Build your life. Be happy. That's all I want now. I read it 3 times, looking for the manipulation, the guilt trip, the hook. Maybe, just maybe, it was simply the truth. Too little, too late, but still the truth. I deleted the message and blocked the number. Tomorrow I'd continue the work of rebuilding. Tonight I'd simply be grateful for Chinese food, an uncle who'd waited 17 years to help, and the strange, painful freedom of finally letting go. 3 weeks passed in a blur of legal documents, police interviews, and the mundane work of untangling my life from my mother's crimes. I'd established a new routine. Mornings at Patricia's office, afternoons at work trying to maintain normalcy, evenings with David Kim tracking down every fraudulent account. Then the call came on a Tuesday morning. Aubrey, this is Patricia. Are you sitting down? My stomach clenched. What now? It's not bad news. Well, not exactly. Your mother wants to make a deal. Full cooperation against Rick in exchange for reduced sentences, but there's a condition. Of course, there is. She wants to transfer the deed to your childhood home to you, the house in River. Apparently, she never sold it. I nearly dropped my coffee. That's impossible. She told me she sold it when I was 7. We moved because she couldn't afford it. She lied. She's been renting it out for 22 years, collecting income you never knew about. It's worth approximately $400,000 in today's market. I sat down hard on my couch. Another lie. Another betrayal. But also my father's house, the home I barely remembered except in fragments, his laugh in the kitchen, bedtime stories in a room with blue walls, a swing set in the backyard. Why now? I asked. Her lawyer says it's an attempt at restitution. The rental income over the years roughly equals what she stole from you. She wants to sign it over free and clear. And in exchange, you provide a victim impact statement supporting her cooperation, not forgiveness, not reconciliation, just acknowledgement that she's trying to make amends. I thought of that house, of the memories buried there. I need to see it first. That afternoon, Ben drove me to River. The neighborhood had changed, gentrification creeping in from the edges. Old triple-deckers renovated into condos. But there it was, the small Cape Cod on Prescott Street, painted yellow now instead of the white I remembered. You okay? Ben asked as we parked. I don't know. The current tenants weren't home. Patricia had arranged for the property manager to let us in. As the door opened, the smell hit me first. Not the same as my childhood, but something underneath the fresh paint and other people's lives. The bones of the house, maybe my history. The layout was achingly familiar. Living room to the left, kitchen straight ahead, stairs to the right. I moved through rooms like a ghost, seeing shadows of furniture long gone, hearing echoes of a life erased. In the kitchen, I found them, marks on the door frame. Height measurements. My name and my father's handwriting. Aubrey, age 4. Aubrey, age 5. They'd painted over them, but the grooves remained. Proof I'd once been measured, tracked, loved. She kept this from me, I said, running my fingers over the marks. All these years, she kept this from me. Ben stood quietly beside me, letting me process. Upstairs, the small bedroom that had been mine was now an office, but the closet door still stuck in the same place, still required the same lift and pull motion I somehow remembered. Inside, on the highest shelf, something caught my eye. A small cardboard box pushed far back, forgotten. Inside, photographs of my father and me at the beach, my first day of kindergarten, Christmas morning with a bike I'd forgotten I'd owned. And at the bottom, a letter in my father's handwriting. My dear Aubrey, it began. If you're reading this, something has happened to me. I sank to the floor, Ben crouching beside me as I read my father's words. He'd written about his hopes for me, his fears about leaving me, his love that would outlast his life, and at the end, be strong, my girl. But more than that, be kind. Even when the world isn't kind to you. He knew, I whispered. He knew he might die young. He tried to prepare. He loved you, Ben said simply. That's what I remember most about Tom. How much he loved you. We spent another hour in the house. Me, trying to reconcile the home I remembered with the asset my mother had hidden. 22 years of rental income. 22 years of lying to me about losing the house to bankruptcy. As we left, I made my decision. I'll take the deal, I told Patricia over the phone, but I have conditions. The meeting was arranged for that Friday, a small conference room in the Suffolk County Jail. My mother, in an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs, looking older than her 53 years. Aubrey, she said, her voice cracking. Thank you for coming. I didn't respond to that, just slid the papers across the table. These are my terms. The house transfers to me immediately. All rental income documentation provided to my accountant. Full disclosure of any other hidden assets. And you testify against Rick without reservation. She nodded quickly. Why? I asked, needing to understand. Why keep the house? Why lie about it? She looked down at her hands. At first, I told myself it was insurance, something for your future. But then Rick found out about it, and it became just another income stream. I lost track of what was meant for you and what was ours. It was never yours, I said flatly. Dad left it to both of us, but it was meant to be my home. I know. I know that now. She met my eyes, and I saw something I'd rarely seen before, genuine remorse. Rick's gone. The FBI found him in Mexico. Did they tell you? He's fighting extradition, but they have him. Good. He had 3 other women, 3 other families he was working. Her voice broke completely. I wasn't special. I was just the one who lasted longest. Who gave him the most. I felt no satisfaction in her pain, but no sympathy either, just a tired kind of resolution. Sign the papers, I said. Do what you've agreed to do. That's all I need from you. Will you ever forgive me? I thought about that. Really considered it. I don't know. Maybe someday I'll forgive the woman who lost her husband and made terrible choices. But the mother who chose a predator over her daughter's safety, who stole from me while I struggled, who made me feel crazy for remembering the truth, I don't think I can forgive her. She signed the papers with shaking hands. As her lawyer notarized them, she spoke again. I'm getting help. Real help, therapy, addiction counseling, everything. I know it's too late for us, but maybe. Maybe. Focus on yourself. Figure out who you are without a man to define you. That's all you can do now. I stood to leave, but she called out. The swing set in the backyard. Tom built it for your 4th birthday. It might still be there. I nodded and left without looking back. 2 weeks later, I stood in the backyard of my childhood home, watching a contractor examine the old swing set. It was weathered but solid, built with my father's characteristic over-engineering. Can it be restored? I asked. Sure, he said. Good bones, just need some work. Good bones, like the house, like me. Maybe. I'd given notice on my apartment. Started packing for the move back to River. Not to recreate the past, but to reclaim it, transform it, make it mine. Ben was helping, along with some friends from work who'd rallied around me as the story came out. You sure about this? Ben asked, carrying boxes from his truck. Lot of memories in this place. That's why I need to do it, I said. I can't run from them anymore, but I can make new ones. The restoration would take time. The house needed updating. My credit needed rebuilding. My trust in people needed careful tending. But I had time now. I had resources. I had an uncle who'd waited 17 years to help me heal. That night, I sat on the porch of my father's house, my house, and read his letter again. Be kind, he'd written. Even when the world isn't kind to you. I thought about my mother in her cell, facing years of consequences. About Rick in a Mexican jail, fighting the inevitable. About the 3 other women he destroyed, now getting their own justice. I couldn't manage kindness yet, but I could manage mercy, which felt like a start. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. Impact statement draft attached. Review and let me know. I opened it, read my own words about the crimes committed against me, the years of abuse and theft and betrayal. But at the end, Patricia had added what I'd asked for. Susan Collins's cooperation has been essential to stopping Richard Morse from harming others. While I cannot forgive the choices she made, I recognize her efforts to prevent others from suffering as I did. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't reconciliation, but it was truth, and that felt like enough. I signed the statement and sent it back, then sat in the gathering darkness of my reclaimed home. Tomorrow, contractors would start the renovation. My life would continue its slow rebuild. But tonight, I simply sat where my father had once pushed me on a swing. Where my mother had once been a different person, where I'd once been safe. The world hadn't been kind, but I was still here, still standing, still capable of choosing something better than what I'd been given. And maybe that was the greatest revenge of all. The video was grainy, but clear enough. Security footage from North Station. Timestamp showing 7:31 p.m., 3 months ago. I watched myself get slapped, watched my head hit the pole, watched my mother lean in with her poisonous whisper. But what the camera captured that I'd missed in the moment was the crowd's reaction, the collective gasp, the phones coming out, the security guard starting forward before Rick and my mother fled. This is our smoking gun, Patricia said, pausing the footage. Combined with Nathan Morrison's testimony and the additional witnesses we've located, Richard Morse doesn't stand a chance. We were in her office, preparing for the trial. Rick had been extradited 2 weeks ago. His Mexican hideout raided after he tried to run the same con on a local widow. Now he sat in Suffolk County Jail, represented by a public defender, who looked perpetually overwhelmed. The other women want to testify, Patricia continued. All 3 of them. They formed a support group. Actually, Patricia corrected, started calling themselves Rick's refugees. That's darkly funny, I admitted. Humor helps. You might want to consider joining them. After this is over. After this is over. The phrase felt foreign. This chaos, the legal battles, the constant anxiety had become my normal. What would after even look like? Detective Santos knocked and entered. Good news and bad news. Good news, the forensic audit is complete. We can prove systematic fraud going back 6 years. Bad news, Richard's lawyer is trying to pin everything on your mother. Of course, he is, I muttered. It won't work, Patricia said firmly. We have his notebook, his history, the previous restraining orders, plus your mother's been remarkably thorough in her cooperation. She's provided recordings, texts, emails. Apparently, she'd been documenting things, too. As insurance. I repeated. She knew he might turn on her. Criminals rarely trust each other, Santos observed. Your mother may have been manipulated, but she wasn't stupid, just selectively blind. I thought about that as I drove home to River. The house renovation was in full swing. Contractors having gutted the kitchen to restore it to something resembling my faint memories. I'd been staying in the guest room, camping out amid the construction dust and memories. Ben was waiting on the porch, take-out bags in hand. He'd been coming by most evenings, bringing dinner, and helping me sort through boxes from the attic, remnants of a life I barely remembered. Found something today, he said, producing a small photo album. Your dad's high school yearbook. Thought you might want to see it. We sat on the porch steps, going through pages of 1980s hair and shoulder pads until we found him, Thomas Collins, senior portrait, showing a young man with my eyes and my stubborn chin. The quote beneath read, "The only way out is through." Frost. He loved that poem, Ben said. Used to quote it whenever things got tough. The only way out is through. Guess you inherited more than his eyes. Did he ever talk about Mom back then? Ben considered. He said she was brilliant but fragile, that she needed someone steady, and he wanted to be that for her. I think he saw saving her as his purpose. And when he died, she found Rick to save her instead. People repeat patterns, Ben said gently. Until they don't. My phone rang. Patricia. Aubrey. I just got word. Richard wants to make a deal. Full confession in exchange for concurrent sentences instead of consecutive. He's looking at 15 to 20 instead of 40. No, I said immediately. He doesn't get to negotiate his way out of this. I understand your anger, but think about it. A trial means testifying, reliving everything in public. It means your mother on the stand, every ugly detail exposed. A plea deal ends it cleanly. I looked at the yearbook photo of my father, frozen in time before life got complicated. What would he want me to do? I'll think about it, I said finally. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house felt too full of ghosts, not frightening ones, just sad echoes of what might have been. At 3 a.m., I gave up and went to the kitchen, making tea in the half-demolished space. The box of papers from the attic sat on the counter. I'd been avoiding it, knowing it contained the detritus of my parents' marriage. But now, in the pre-dawn quiet, I opened it. Marriage certificate, death certificate, insurance papers, and then, at the bottom, a bundle of letters tied with ribbon. My mother's handwriting on envelope after envelope, all addressed to my father, all dated after his death. I shouldn't have read them. They weren't meant for me. But I did. Dear Tom, the first one began. Aubrey asked why you're not coming home today. I didn't know how to explain death to a 6-year-old. Letter after letter, a one-sided conversation with a dead man. Her grief was raw, desperate, evolving slowly into the bitter anger I knew so well. By the last letter, dated just before Rick appeared, she wrote, I can't do this alone anymore. I'm drowning. And Aubrey looks at me with your eyes, expecting me to be strong. I'm not strong, Tom. I never was. You were my strength. And you left. I set the letters aside, my hands shaking. This woman, lost, grieving, overwhelmed. I could almost understand, almost forgive. But she'd made choices after that. Choices that crushed the daughter with her dead husband's eyes. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Miranda Chen from Rick's Refugees. Patricia gave me your number. I stared at the text, then at the letters, then at the half-demolished kitchen where my height had been measured with love. The only way out is through. Yes, I texted back. I'll be there. The next evening, I walked into a community center in Somerville, following signs to conference room B. 4 women sat around a table, coffee and cookies between them like armor against hard truths. You must be Aubrey, said an Asian woman about my age. I'm Miranda. This is Jennifer, Rosa, and Diane. We are all members of a club nobody wants to join. Rick's survivors, Jennifer added. She was older, maybe 50, with tired eyes. Though I prefer to think of us as the women who brought him down. They made space for me, poured coffee, and waited. Slowly, I told my story. Not just Rick, but my mother. The years of grooming me to accept abuse as normal. They nodded at familiar points, winced at others. The mothers are almost worse than the men, Rosa said quietly. My mom knew my ex was hitting me. Said I needed to learn to keep him calm. Mine said it was my fault for gaining weight after the baby, Diane added. That I'd driven him to it. We talked for 2 hours, sharing war stories and small victories. Miranda had successfully pressed charges. Jennifer had gotten a restraining order that stuck. Rosa had started a non-profit for abuse survivors. What's your victory? Miranda asked me. I thought about it. I got my house back. My father's house. And I'm learning the difference between family and relatives. That's a big one, Jennifer said. Blood doesn't mean safe. As I drove home, I felt something shifting. These women had survived Rick at different times, in different ways, but we shared a common truth, we'd gotten out. We'd rebuilt. We were more than what had been done to us. At home, I found Ben waiting again, this time with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. Thought you might need this, he said. How was the group? Hard, good, both. I accepted the glass gratefully. I'm going to take the plea deal. He nodded, unsurprised. What changed your mind? Those women, they've all moved on, built lives after Rick. I don't want to spend months in court relitigating the past. I want to focus on the future. Your dad would be proud, Ben said quietly. You found your way through. We sat on the porch, watching the stars appear over river. Tomorrow I'd call Patricia and accept the deal. Rick would go to prison for 15 years minimum. My mother would serve 5 to 7. The house renovation would continue. My credit would slowly rebuild. But tonight, I sat with my chosen family, an uncle who'd waited 17 years to help. A home that remembered love, and the knowledge that I'd survived what was meant to break me. "The only way out is through," I murmured. "What's that?" "Something Dad used to say," I explained. I'm beginning to understand what he meant. As the night deepened, I felt the weight of 3 months' worth of revelations, confrontations, and legal battles settling into something like acceptance. Not forgiveness, that might never come. Not forgetting, the scars were too deep, but acceptance that this was my story. Inside, the kitchen waited for its rebirth. Upstairs, boxes of memories waited to be sorted. In prison, 2 people who'd shaped my life through their choices waited for their sentences, and I waited for nothing. The waiting was over. The real work, the building of a life free from their shadows, had already begun. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined. No dramatic gallery, no imposing judge's bench like on TV, just a functional room where lives were dissected and justice was portioned out in years and months. I sat in the witness section with Ben, Patricia on my other side, across the aisle. Rick sat in an orange jumpsuit, looking smaller than I remembered. Prison had deflated him somehow, revealed the pathetic core beneath the bluster. His public defender, a young man who looked fresh from law school, shuffled papers nervously. My mother wasn't here. She'd already been sentenced 2 weeks ago, 6 years with the possibility of parole in 4, contingent on continued cooperation. I hadn't attended her hearing. "All rise," the bailiff called. The Honourable Judge Margaret Walsh presiding. Judge Walsh was in her 60s with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much. She reviewed the plea agreement while the courtroom held its breath. "Mr. Morse," she began, "you've agreed to plead guilty to 14 counts of fraud, 3 counts of identity theft, 4 counts of domestic violence, and 1 count of assault and battery. Is this correct?" "Yes, Your Honor." His voice was smaller, too, stripped of its usual arrogance. "And you understand that by accepting this plea, you waive your right to trial?" "Yes." Patricia had prepared me for this moment. But hearing him admit guilt still hit differently than I'd expected. All those years of gaslighting, of Bengtois told I was dramatic, oversensitive, lying, and here he was, finally admitting the truth. "I'd like to hear from the victims," Judge Walsh said. "Ms. Collins." I stood on legs that felt disconnected from my body. The victim impact statement was in my hand, carefully prepared. But when I reached the podium, I set it aside. "Your Honor," I began, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "I was 12 when Richard Morse entered my life. I was 29 when I finally found the courage to hold him accountable. That's 17 years of my life shaped by his violence, his manipulations, his greed." I looked at Rick, then really looked at him. He stared at the table, unable to meet my eyes. But I'm not here to talk about what he took from me. I'm here to talk about what he failed to take. He didn't take my ability to build a life despite him. He didn't take my capacity to trust good people like my Uncle Ben. He didn't take my father's house, though he tried. And he didn't take my future. Judge Walsh nodded for me to continue. "Richard Morris is a professional predator. He targets vulnerable women, isolates them, drains them financially and emotionally, then moves on. My mother was one victim. Jennifer Martinez was another. Rosa Delgado, Diane Humphrey, Miranda Weston. We've all testified to his patterns, his violence, his complete lack of remorse. What are you asking this court to do, Ms. Collins?" "I'm asking you to ensure he never does this again. The plea agreement suggests 15 to 20 years. I'm asking for the maximum, not out of vengeance, but out of necessity, because there will be other vulnerable women if he's released. Other daughters who will grow up thinking abuse is normal. Other families destroyed for his gain." I returned to my seat, my hands shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. Jennifer went next, then Rosa, each telling their piece of the pattern. Rick shrank further with each testimony. His lawyer made a brief statement about rehabilitation, about his client's difficult childhood, about the possibility of change. It rang hollow in the face of four women's truth. Judge Walsh took a recess to consider. We waited in the hallway. The Ricks refugees group huddled together like war veterans. You did good, Miranda whispered. Really good. When court reconvened, Judge Walsh's expression was granite. Mr. Morse, I've reviewed your history. 2 prior convictions for domestic violence, multiple restraining orders, a clear pattern of targeting vulnerable women for financial and emotional exploitation. You've shown no remorse except for being caught. She paused, looking directly at him. The plea agreement suggests 15 to 20 years. I'm sentencing you to 20 years with no possibility of early release. You will serve this time in full. You will pay restitution to all victims. You will have no contact with any of the victims or their families upon release. The gavel fell with finality. Rick finally looked up then, his face contorting with rage. He turned toward me, mouth opening, but the bailiffs were already moving. Whatever poison he wanted to spew died unspoken, as they hauled him away. It's over, Patricia said quietly. It's really over. But it wasn't. Not quite. 3 hours later, I stood in a different courtroom for a different kind of proceeding. This time, I was the plaintiff, not the victim. Patricia stood beside me as we faced a judge regarding the civil matters, the identity theft, the fraud, the systematic destruction of my financial life. Your Honor, Patricia began, we are seeking full restitution for all fraudulent debts incurred in my client's name, plus damages for credit destruction and emotional distress. The evidence was overwhelming. David Kim testified about the extent of the financial crimes. Bank representatives confirmed the fraudulent accounts. Credit agencies detailed the damage to my score and the long road to recovery. Ms. Collins, the judge asked, what would make you whole in this situation? I thought about it. I don't think anything can undo 17 years of abuse. But having my debts cleared, my credit restored, and the ability to move forward without this financial burden, that would be a start. The judgment was swift and complete. All fraudulent debts discharged. Restitution ordered from both Rick's and my mother's future assets. A legal declaration that I was a victim of identity theft, clearing the way for credit repair. Outside the courthouse, Boston's autumn air felt crisp and clean. Ben waited by his car, a small smile on his face. Hungry, he asked. I know a place that serves victory pancakes. Victory pancakes. It's like regular pancakes, but sweeter. We drove to a small diner in East Boston, the kind of place where the coffee was strong and the waitress called everyone, hun, over pancakes and bacon. We didn't talk about the trial or the verdict. Instead, Ben told stories about my father, the time he tried to build a treehouse and ended up hanging upside down from a branch, the way he'd sung off-key in the shower, his terrible jokes that made everyone groan. He would have been proud today, Ben said finally. The way you stood up there, spoke your truth, that took real courage. I don't feel courageous. I feel tired. That's what courage feels like, kiddo. Exhausted, but still standing. My phone buzzed with texts from the Ricks refugees group, photos from the courthouse steps, messages of support, plans for a celebration dinner next week. These women, who'd been strangers 3 months ago, now felt like sisters in survival. That evening, I returned to my father's house, my house, to find the kitchen renovation complete. The contractors had left a bottle of champagne on the new granite counter with a note, heard the good news. Enjoy your fresh start, Mike and crew. I opened the champagne alone, pouring a glass and raising it to the empty room. To fresh starts, I said aloud. To survival. To the only way out being through. The house felt different now, not haunted by the past, but ready for the future. Tomorrow, the rest of the renovation would continue. I'd start the process of credit repair, of rebuilding my professional reputation, after months of legal chaos. I'd attend my first official RICS refugees meeting as a full member, no longer in crisis, but in recovery. But tonight, I sat in my new kitchen, in my reclaimed home, and felt something I hadn't experienced in 17 years, safe. Truly, completely safe. My phone rang, an unknown number, but I recognized the prison exchange. This is a collect call from Suffolk County Correctional Facility. Will you accept? For a moment, I considered it. One last conversation, one last chance for what? Closure. An apology that would actually mean something. No, I said firmly. I will not accept. I hung up and blocked the number. Then I poured another glass of champagne and went out to the backyard, where my father's rebuilt swing set stood ready for the children. I might have someday children who would never know a home where violence was normal, where love came with conditions, where safety was negotiable. The stars were bright over river, and somewhere in the distance, a train whistle blew, the sound that had started this journey when Uncle Ben, disguised as Nathan Morrison, had witnessed the moment I finally began fighting back. 20 years in prison, 6 years for my mother, 0 years left of carrying their burden. The numbers felt like poetry, like justice, like the turning of a page I'd been afraid to turn for far too long. Inside, my laptop waited with emails from Patricia about next steps, from David Kim about financial recovery, from my boss about returning to work full-time. The business of rebuilding awaited. But for now, I swung gently in the autumn night in the backyard of my childhood, finally and completely free. The train pulled into North Station at 7:31 p.m., exactly 1 year after everything changed. I stood on platform 3, not because I needed to catch a train, but because I needed to close a circle. Ben stood beside me in his conductor's uniform, now officially back to using his real name. The identity of Nathan Morrison had been retired once Rick was safely behind bars. He'd even gotten a promotion, supervisor of the Northern Lines, a position that let him help other employees who might be escaping their own Rick Morses. You sure about this? He asked. I'm sure. The platform bustled with evening commuters, the same anonymous crowd that had witnessed my humiliation a year ago. But I wasn't the same woman who'd been slapped into a pole. My hair was shorter now. Professional but edgy. My clothes fit better. Amazing what happened when you weren't spending half your energy on hypervigilance. And my face. My face showed no bruises, no fear, no apology for existing. Excuse me. A young woman approached hesitantly. Are you Aubrey Collins from the article? The Boston Globe had run a feature story about Rick's conviction and the network of women who'd brought him down. My picture had been on the front page of the Metro section. I am, I said. I just wanted to say thank you. My ex-boyfriend, he was like that. Reading about what you all did gave me the courage to leave. She shifted nervously. Is it really possible to rebuild after? I thought about the past year. The house renovation was complete, transformed from a monument to loss into a home full of light. My credit score had climbed back to 650. Not perfect, but respectable. The logistics company had promoted me to regional manager, my boss impressed by how I'd handled crisis. The RICS Refugees had become an official non-profit, helping other women navigate the legal system. Yes, I told her. It's hard. Some days are harder than others, but it's possible. She thanked me and hurried away, hope replacing some of the fear in her eyes. Ben smiled. Look at you. Changing lives. We changed lives, I corrected. All of us together. A text buzzed on my phone. Miranda's still coming to dinner. He has news. The Rix refugees met monthly now. No longer for crisis management, but for celebration. Jennifer had started dating again. Diane's book had hit the bestseller list, and Miranda was pregnant. Building the family Rick had tried to convince her she didn't deserve. Go, Ben said. I've got to actually work this shift, but Sunday dinner is still on. Wouldn't miss it. Sunday dinners at my house had become tradition. Ben would cook. Turns out he'd inherited our family's culinary skills while I provided the space and the wine. Sometimes the other women joined us. Sometimes it was just us, the uncle and niece rebuilding a relationship that had been stolen by lies. I took one last look around platform 3. The pole I'd hit was still there. Unremarkable metal that had witnessed my lowest moment. But it was just a pole. The platform was just concrete. The station was just a building. They had no power over me anymore. The drive to Cambridge was smooth, autumn painting the trees in shades of fire. I parked outside the restaurant where the women waited, visible through the window, laughing at something Rosa had said. My phone rang as I walked toward them, a number I didn't recognize. Aubrey Collins. Yes, I confirmed. This is Sarah Wellington from the Massachusetts Bar Association. I'm calling about your nomination for the Victims' Rights Advocate Award. Congratulations, you've been selected as this year's recipient. I stopped walking, processing this. Patricia must have nominated me. Miss Collins, are you there? Yes. Sorry, I'm just surprised. Thank you. The ceremony is next month. Yes, I said, finding my voice. Yes, I accept. Through the window, Miranda spotted me and waved excitedly. I ended the call and joined my chosen family, sliding into the booth they'd saved for me. What's the news? I asked. We got approved, Rosa beamed. The state approved our application. Rix Refugees is officially a recognized victim advocacy organization. We can apply for grants, offer official support services, maybe even open a shelter someday. That's amazing. I felt tears prick my eyes, the good kind. The kind I'd learned were okay to show. And Jennifer added, we've been contacted by women in 3 other states. They want to start chapters. We are going national, baby. We toasted with water and wine. 5 women who'd been broken by the same man, but had refused to stay broken. Our laughter filled the restaurant, no longer bitter, but genuine. I have news too, I said, and told them about the award. Another round of celebration, more tears, more joy wrung from the ashes of our trauma. Later, as we walked to our cars, Diane pulled me aside. I wanted to thank you, she said quietly. For going first, for being brave when the rest of us couldn't be. We all went first in our own ways, I replied. You wrote the book. Rosa started the non-profit. We all fought back. But you faced your mother, too. That's a different kind of courage. I thought about my mother serving her sentence upstate. She wrote me letters I didn't open. Sent them anyway. Maybe someday I'd read them. Maybe someday I'd even visit. But not yet. Not until I was sure I could face her without losing the self I'd fought so hard to reclaim. That night, I sat in my father's study. My study now, preparing notes for the award speech. How did you summarize a journey from victim to survivor to advocate? How did you explain that the breaking had also been a breaking open? My laptop dinged with an email. The subject line made me freeze. From Susan Collins, please read. Not a letter this time, but an email sent through the prison's monitored system. Against every instinct, I opened it. Aubrey, I know you don't read my letters. I don't blame you. But I wanted you to know I testified in another case today. Another woman Rick hurt because of what I said. She'll get justice. It doesn't undo what I did to you. Nothing can. But maybe it helps balance the scales a little. I'm getting help here. Real help. Learning who I am without a man defining me. Like you said, I hope someday you can forgive me. But if you can't, I understand. I love you. I've always loved you. I just forgot how to show it properly. Mom? Mom? I closed the email, sat with it for a while, then I opened a new document and began writing my speech. The only way out is through, I typed. My father taught me that, though I didn't understand it until I was forced to live it. When we are trapped in abuse, we think there are only two options, endure or escape. But there's a third way, through. Through the fear, through the legal system, through the pain of confronting those who hurt us, through the long work of rebuilding. The words flowed. Truth distilled from pain into something useful, something that might help others find their own way through. Outside, a train whistle blew in the distance, but it no longer sounded like a warning or an ending. Now it sounded like what it had always been, a machine carrying people from where they were to where they needed to be. I was already where I needed to be. Home, safe, surrounded by chosen family, building a life that honored both the girl who'd been hurt and the woman who'd survived. The speech could wait until tomorrow. Tonight, I opened a bottle of wine, put on music, and danced alone in my kitchen. Not because I was celebrating anything specific, but because I could. Because joy was a choice I got to make now. Because the train had left the station, and I wasn't on it. I was home. Thank you for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please leave a comment and share your thoughts. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. And if you want more people to hear this story, please hit the like button to help it reach those who might need to hear it. Your support means everything.